get started. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nārāyanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tado Jayamudrige Yashta Presho Bhadresho Nityam Bhagavatasya Sevya Bhagavatam Tava Sloke Bhakti Bhaktinestiki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayana, unto Nānṛtaṁ Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance of the classes of the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd canto, 5th chapter, verse number 10. nānṛtaṁ cāpi yathā prabravīṣi bhoḥ avijñāya paraṁ matta etāvat yato nānṛtaṁ cāpi yathā prabravīṣi bhoḥ avijñāya paraṁ matta etāvat yato. What do it mean? Na, not. Nānṛtaṁ, false. Tava, of yours. Tat, that. Cha, also. Cāpi, as you have stated. Yathā, in the matter of mam, of myself. Prabravīṣi, as you described. O my son. Avijñāya, without knowing. Paraṁ, the supreme. Matta, beyond myself. Etāvat, all that you have spoken. Tvaṁ, yourself. Yathā, for the reason of I, certainly, nay, about me. Translation by Pudhuvai Vrindavanam Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Whatever you've spoken about me is not false, because unless and until one is aware of the personality of Godhead, who is the ultimate truth beyond me, one is sure to be illusioned by observing my powerful activities. Repeat once again. Whatever you have spoken about me is not false, because unless and until one is aware of the personality of Godhead, who is the ultimate truth beyond me, one is sure to be illusioned by observing my performance. The frog in the well logic illustrates that a frog residing in the atmosphere and boundary of a well cannot imagine the length and breadth of the gigantic ocean. Such a frog, when informed of the gigantic length and ocean, first of all, does not believe that there is such an ocean. And if someone assures him that factually there is such a thing, the frog then begins to measure it by imagination, by means of pumping its body as far as possible. But similarly, the material scientists also want to challenge the inconceivable potency of the Lord by measuring him with their frog-like brains and their scientific achievements. But at the end, they simply die unsuccessfully. Sometimes a materially powerful man is accepted as God or the incarnation of God without any knowledge of the factual world. Such a material assessment may be gradually extended, and the attempt may reach to the highest limit of Brahmaji, who is the topmost living being in the universe and has a duration of life unimaginable to the material scientist. As we get information from the most authentic book of knowledge, the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, text 17, Brahmaji's one day and night is calculated to be some hundreds, thousands of years on the planet. This long duration of life may not be believed by the frog in the well, but persons who have a realization of the truths mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita accept the existence of a great personality who creates the variegatedness of creations. It is understood from the revealed scriptures that the Brahmaji of this universe is younger than all of the other Brahmas in charge of many, many universes beyond this, but none of them can be equal to the personality of God. Naradaji is one of the liberated souls, and after his liberation, he was known as Narada. Otherwise, before his liberation, he was simply a son of a maid servant. The questions may be asked why Naradaji was not aware of the Supreme Lord and why he misconceived Brahmaji to be Supreme Lord, although if actually he was not. A liberated soul is never bewildered by such a mistaken idea. So why did Naradaji ask all those questions, just like an ordinary man with a poor fund of knowledge? There was such bewilderment in Arjuna also, although he is eternally associated with him. Such bewilderment in Arjuna or Narada takes place with the will of the Lord, so that other non-liberated persons may realize the real knowledge of the Lord. The doubt arising in the mind of Narada about Brahmaji is becoming all powerful is a lesson for the frogs in the well, that they may not be bewildered in misconceiving the identity of the personality of God, even by comparison to a personality like Brahma. So, what to speak of ordinary men who falsely pose themselves as God? The Supreme Lord is always the Supreme, and as we have tried to establish many times in this purpose, no living being, even up to the standard of Brahma, can claim to be one with the Lord. One should not be misled when people worship a great man as God after his death as a matter of hero worship. There are many kings like Lord Ramachandra, king of Ayodhya, but none of them are mentioned as God in the Vedic scriptures. To be a good king is not necessarily the qualification of being Lord Rama, but to be a great personality like Krishna is the qualification for being personality of God. If we scrutinize the characters of good part in the battle of Kurukshetra, we will find that Maharaj Yudhishthira was no less a pious king than Lord Ramachandra. And by character study, Maharaj Yudhishthira was a better moralist than Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna asked Maharaj Yudhishthira to lie, but Maharaj Yudhishthira protested. But that does not mean that Maharaj Yudhishthira will be equal to Lord Ramachandra. The great authorities have estimated Maharaj Yudhishthira to be a pious man, but they have accepted Lord Rama or Krishna as a supreme personality. Got it. The Lord is therefore a different identity in all circumstances, and no idea of anthropomorphism can be applied to him. The Lord is always the Lord, and a common living being can never be equal to him. Thus in the Bhakta. Om Ajnanativaramdasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadanti. Vandeham Sri Gurum Srita Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sri Rupam Sagarjatam Sahagana Raghunathanvidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Harijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvidam. He Krishna Karno Sindhu Deenabandho Jagatpade Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste. Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya. Vancha Kalupatruvyashta Kripasindhubhya evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namarom Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschyata Deshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara. Sorry, smaller. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaur Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. So Hare Krishna. Thank you all for joining this discussion on the Srimad Bhagavatam. So we are on the second canto, 5th chapter, verse number 10. It's the Sloka nānṛtaṁ tava cāpi yathā prabravīṣi bhoḥ avijñāya paraṁ matta, etāvat tvaṁ. Whatever you have spoken about me is not false, because unless and until one is aware of the personality of Godhead, who is the ultimate truth beyond me, one is sure to be illusioned by observing my path. So this is a statement that Lord Brahma, Lord Brahmaji is making to Narada Muni. So in the beginning of this chapter, which is called the process of creation, Narada Muni is inquiring from Brahma about the process of creation. But before Brahmaji can start answering Narada Muni's questions, Narada Muni is accepting Brahma as the controller, as a person who knows everything. So he is praising Brahmaji, saying that you are the controller, you know everything. You know the past, you know the present, you know the future. So Narada Muni, he is putting himself in the position of a student. And last week we discussed the verse, how Narada Muni exhibits himself as a perfect student, and how Brahmaji exhibits himself as a perfect master by answering all the questions that Narada Muni is posing. So after Narada Muni has praised Brahmaji, and after he has posed his questions to Brahmaji on the matter of creation, Brahmaji is here starting to respond. So the first thing Brahmaji is telling Narada Muni is, whatever you've spoken about me is not false, because unless and until one is aware of the personality of God, is the ultimate truth beyond me, one is sure to be illusioned by observing that. So Brahmaji is saying that he is a very powerful person. But though he is a very powerful person, he is accepting the fact that there is a personality who is greater than me. There is a personality who is greater than me, and that personality is responsible for creation of this world. Now, this is a very important point here. When we accept a personality who is greater than us, only then we can come out of illusion. In fact, this concept of us being in illusion, us being in the material scheme of things, is itself because we have forgotten the personality of God. So when we forget the personality of Godhead, we think ourselves as the control. In fact, contrary to this verse, in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, where Brahmaji offers his prayers to Krishna, so there he says, in 15, sorry, let's go to this. Here, if you see, it's a very nice verse. So here Brahmaji says, Atas Shamabhyachuto me rajo bhavo ayajanatasvat pratak ishamaninaha ajavale phanad tamo natha chakshusha esho nukampyo mayinatarum. He says, therefore, O infallible Lord, kindly excuse my offenses. I have taken birth in the mode of passion, and am therefore simply foolish, presuming myself a controller independent of your lordship. My eyes are blinded by the darkness of ignorance, which causes me to think of myself as the unborn creator of the universe. But please consider that I am your servant, and therefore work you for. This is the prayer that Lord Brahma is offering to Krishna. This is part of the Brahma Mohana Leela. So the Brahma Mohana Leela is elaborately described in chapter 13, where Brahma takes away all the friends of Lord Krishna and hides them in his planet for almost 1 year. But Krishna himself expands into all those different forms, friends and his cows, and he continues his pastime. So when Brahma looks at this after 1 year, he is bewildered, and he realizes Krishna to be the supreme personality. That's when Brahma comes to his senses and realizes that, oh, okay, I have been illusioned by the Lord. This entire Leela the Lord is created to help me understand that I am not the supreme. So even Brahma, though in the verse that we are discussing today, he accepts the fact that the Lord is the controller. Even Brahma at times is prone to get illusion, thinking that he is the controller. In fact, this is the very reason why the living entity comes to this material world. The living entity comes to this material world because he forgets his identity as a servitor of the Lord. The minute the living entity thinks himself as the controller of the Lord, or the controller of the universe, not the controller of the Lord, controller of the universe, that's when he falls into this world. That's the cause of the downfall of all the living entities. Which is why Prabhupada, in this, going back to this verse, Prabhupada gives this very important frog philosophy. So this is a very famous example that Srila Prabhupada explains, this frog in the well philosophy. So this frog philosophy, the way this frog thinks when it is within the well, it thinks that there's nobody who is greater than him. You know, it measures everything in the context of how this well is designed. So you cannot imagine things beyond this well. Even if you go and tell the frog that there is an ocean there, the frog will start thinking, how big is that ocean? Is it 10 times the size of a well? Is how the frog will. Just like we in the material world, when we are told about the spiritual world, we tend to imagine the spiritual world in the context of the material world. Or we try and say, oh, okay, will there be a house like this? Will there be a car, a scooter, all of this paraphernalia will be there? Is how we try and imagine the spiritual world. So, that's why when the spiritual world is described in texts like Bhagavatam, it's a little difficult for us to understand because our philosophy or our understanding is like the frog world. We are trying to compare the spiritual world, keeping into consideration how we think the material world works. Just like the frog is trying to relate to the ocean by thinking about how big that ocean is in comparison to this. So, this kind of understanding will not help us understand the reality. Because to understand the reality, somebody who's outside the well only can explain that. And we have to seek that knowledge, accept that authority. Only then we will know how big that ocean is. So similarly, here, when we as living entities come into this material world, we are prone to think ourselves as a control. This is the precise reason why we are coming. And the only way to get out of this illusion, right, is to accept a personality who is aware of things that is happening in the other side. Just like the frog in the well, if the frog in the well has to understand the reality of the ocean, or how big the ocean is, somebody who is aware of that ocean, he explains it to the frog, and the frog accepts the statements of that authority, then everything. So this part is very nicely explained in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam in a conversation between King Nimi and the Navayogendras. So just to give you some context, King Nimi is part of the Surya Vamsha. So he comes to the lineage of Vaivasvaram, and this is elaborately described in the 9th canto of the Bhagavatam. King Nimi's dynasty. That is, he's the last of the kings that is described by Srila Sukadeva Goswami in the Surya Vamsha. So this King Nimi, once he conducted a sacrifice and he invited Vashishta Muni, right, to come and conduct that sacrifice. But Vashishta Muni was busy with, he had already given his day to another yajna that is to be performed for Indra. So he could not participate in the sacrifice that King Nimi had invited him. So King Nimi became very furious and he cursed Vashishta Muni. Vashishta Muni in turn cursed King Nimi to die. So King Nimi was to leave this world because of the curse from Vashishta. So what happened was, King Nimi's body, it was churned. The priests wanted to see if they can retrieve, bring back King Nimi's life. So they churned his body. But when he was aware that he was being given life again, King Nimi was not interested in material life. So instead, what the priest did was, they churned his body and King Janaka appeared from his body. So this is the description of King Nimi, which is given in the 9th canto. Now, this King Nimi attained all of the spiritual knowledge from the Nava-yogendras. And the Nava-yogendras are the sons of Rishabdev. So King Rishabdev, who is actually an incarnation of the Supreme Lord, his activities are described in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam. So the Nava-yogendras are the sons of Rishabdev. Rishabdev, in fact, had 100 sons. The eldest of those 100 sons was Bharata Maharaj. 81 of his sons became Brahmanas, 10 of them became Kshatriyas, and the remaining 9 became Nava-yogendras. So there was a conversation between King Nimi and the Nava-yogendras, which happens in the 11th canto, 3rd chapter. And there, King Nimi is specifically asking about the illusory aspects related to the Supreme Lord. What is Maya? What is illusion? Like this subject matter, King Nimi is posing to the Nava-yogendras. And if we go to that particular chapter, we can find how this living entity has actually become conditioned. How is it that this living entity, by falsely identifying himself as a controller, actually falls into this material ocean? So here, if you see, this is the first verse of the 11th canto, 3rd chapter. Here's King Nimi saying, King Nimi said, now we wish to learn about the illusory potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Vishnu, which bewilders even great mystics. My Lord, please speak to us about this. So, in response to this, after this. So this is one of the Nava-yogendras. Antariksha is one of the Nava-yogendras. So he is responding, O mighty King, by activating the material elements, the primeval soul of all creation has sent forth all living beings in higher and lower species, so that these conditioned souls can cultivate either sense gratification or ultimate liberation, according to it. So, Vishnu, by activating the material elements, the primeval soul of all creation has sent forth all living beings in either higher species of life, like Brahma, or lower species of life, so that these conditioned souls can cultivate either sense gratification or ultimate liberation, according to this. Now, the next verse, it is explained, the super soul enters the material bodies of the created beings, activates the mind and senses, and thus causes the conditioned souls to approach the 3 modes of material nature for sense gratification. So this is how the super soul gives facility to the material living entity to enjoy. And this verse explains the individual living being, the master of the material body, uses his material senses, which have been activated by the super soul, to try to enjoy sense objects composed of the 3 modes of nature. Thus, he misidentifies the created material body with the unborn eternal self and becomes entangled in the illusion. So, this entanglement happens because the living entity has identified himself with this material body. The living entity wants to enjoy independent of the Lord. That is what is causing the living entity to fall down to this material world. So thus the conditioned living entity is forced to experience repeated birth and death. Impelled by the reactions of his own activities, he helplessly wanders from one inauspicious situation to another, suffering from the moment of creation until the moment of death. So this chapter explains how this living entity has fallen down from his position. And the chief reason why this living entity has fallen down from his position is because he wants to take the position of control. So Lord Brahma, in this verse, he identifies the Lord Krishna to be the supreme controller. So he's come out of that illusion. But we as living entities, when we don't identify the presence of the Lord and think ourselves as a controller, we fall into this trap. That is why in this particular verse it is said, so if you go to this verse, Tasmat Gurum Prapadyate Jignasu Shreya Uttamam Sabde Parecha Nishnatam Brahmani Mashreya. This verse all of you know. Therefore here means if one has to actually come out of this illusion, therefore any person who seriously desires real happiness must seek a bona fide spiritual master and take shelter. So the method of coming out of this illusion, of this trap, is to seek the shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. So this bona fide spiritual master who is outside this well, right, he can show us our real identity. He can show us where the real ocean is and take us to the place where there is eternal life full of bliss and knowledge. So the way the living entity can come out of this illusion is only by accepting the process. Otherwise, the living entity will be trapped. In fact, a similar statement is made by Lord Shiva in the 8th canto of the Bhagavatam. So in the 8th canto of the Bhagavatam, there is this pastime where the Mohini Murti incarnation appears. And Lord Shiva himself is bewildered by the Mohini Murti incarnation, because it's a very beautiful incarnation of the Lord. And Lord Shiva, he wanted to experience the beauty of this incarnation. So Lord Shiva was illusioned when he saw the beauty, and he thought that this is what is beauty in its original form. In fact, started running after the moon. But later on, he realized that this was the power of the illusion. Of course, Lord Shiva was temporarily put in that situation. This was just to enact the pastime of the Lord. Lord Shiva is not somebody who can be easily illusioned. But even Lord Shiva says to Parvati Devi as part of this pastime, go to this verse 8, 12, 14. Yeah, you see. Ayi vyapayas vamajasya mayam parasya pumsha paradevatayam aham kalanam rishabhopi bhuye yayavasonye kim utashpadantraha. Lord Shiva said, "O Goddess, you now see the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the unborn master of everyone. Although I am one of the principal expansions of his Lordship, even I was illusioned by his energy. What then is to be said of others? See how powerful the Lord's illusory energy is. The Lord's illusory energy is very, very powerful. That's why the Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita, Devayesha gunamayi mamamaya durteyaha mamevaya prapadyante mayametam karantu. This particular verse, 7:14, is particularly to explain this divine energy of mind consisting of the three modes of material nature is difficult to overcome. But those who surrendered on to me can easily cross beyond. The point we have to understand here is to surrender on to the Lord, one first has to accept the authority of a bona fide spiritual master, which is what was explained in 11.3.21. The Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that one has to surrender on to him. But for one to even surrender on to Krishna, it is possible only by the via media of a bona fide spiritual master. And that is the instruction that the Nava Yogendras gave to Ignan. In fact, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, right, this is very beautifully explained when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving instructions to Sanatana Goswami. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is instructing Sanatana Goswami. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Krishna Bhuriya Jeev Anadi Bahirmukh Ateva Mayate De Samsaramukh. So, when the living entity forgets its constitutional position as the servant of the Lord, that is when he experiences all kinds of suffering. So all of the suffering that a living entity experiences is because of him forgetting his true identity. So if we go to Matthew 20, Krishna Bhuriya se Jeev Anadi Bahirmukh Ateva Mayatare De Samsara. Forgetting Krishna, the living entity has been attracted by the external feature from time immemorial. Therefore, the illusory energy Maya gives all kinds of mistakes. So the minute we forget Krishna, the minute we think we are the controller, then finished. Then we get trapped. That is why Brahmaji is making the statement that I will be in illusion as long as I don't recognize the supreme truth. In fact, further to this, Mahaprabhu explains, in a material condition, the living entity is sometimes raised to higher planetary systems and material prosperity, and sometimes drowned in a hellish situation. His state is exactly like that of a criminal whom a king punishes by submerging him in water and then raising him again. You see, this is a very beautiful example that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives. Kabhu swarge uthaya, kabhu narake dubaya, dandya jhane raja yena nadite chubaya. This nadite chubaya means, so Prabodhananda Saraswati, who is the uncle of Gopala Bhatta Goswami, he gives a very similar example. He says that he compares this material happiness, how this material happiness is. If supposing you catch hold of somebody and you dip his head into the water, right? What will happen? He will not be able to breathe. The condition is very difficult, right? If somebody catches hold of your head and pushes you into a pool of water, you will not be able to breathe. It's a very difficult condition. Now, what that person might do is, temporarily he might pull you out. And when he pulls you out, you feel so happy. You're bringing your breath back. You feel so rejuvenated. Only to realize that he's going to push you again into that water. So, Prabodhananda Saraswati compares this material happiness to that. A similar example is here given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, this material world is a place where the happiness is restricted only to that condition when you come out of that water. You feel some breath coming back. You feel some energy. You feel some happiness. But you're again going to be dipped in that water. This is how the material works. Mahaprabhu goes on to further explain how one can come out of this illusion. When the living entity is attracted by the material energy, which is separate from Krishna, he is overpowered by fear. Because he is separated from the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the material energy, his conception of life is reversed. In other words, instead of being the eternal servant of Krishna, he becomes Krishna's competitor. You see, this is what happens. You become Krishna's competitor. You start thinking you're the controller. This is called viparyayosmati. To nullify this mistake, one who is actually learned and advanced worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a spiritual master, worship of the deity and source of life. He thus worships the Lord by the process of unalloyed devotion. So the living entity, when he's separated from Krishna, he gets into this fearful state. And in that fearful state, he wants to come out of this material world. But his disease is that he is comparing himself to Krishna. He is thinking himself as Krishna's competitor. So the only way this living entity can come out is by taking shelter of himself. Further goes on to explain. If the conditioned soul becomes Krishna conscious by the mercy of saintly persons who voluntarily preach scriptural injunctions and help him to become Krishna conscious, the conditioned soul is liberated from the clutches of Maya. See? So here Mahaprabhu is making a very, very important point. Sadhu Shastra Kripaya Yadi Krishnon Mukha Hai. You see in the first verse, it was said Bahir Mukha. Right? Anadir Bahir Mukha. Bahir Mukha means turning your face away from Krishna. Here it is said Sadhu Shastra Kripaya Yadi Krishna Mukha Hai. So the way we can turn our face back to Krishna is by taking shelter of two things, Sadhu, Shastra, Kripaya. So Sadhu, Shastra, Kripaya, Yadi, Krishnan Mukha, say Jiva Nishtare, Maya Taharicha. So the way we can actually give up this illusion of thinking ourselves as a controller is by taking help from Sadhu and Shastra. If you take help from Sadhu and Shastra, like what the Navayogendras had prescribed, Tasmat Guru Prabhatyam, Vijñāna Shishya, same thing there. We can become Krishnan Mukha instead of Bahir Mukha. So our current state is Anadi Bahir Mukha. We have turned our face away from Krishna. And the only way we can start looking at Krishna, understanding Krishna, Krishna's activities, pastimes, all of that is to take the help of Sadhu. Only by that process we can understand. Otherwise, we are prone to think that we are the control, which is how the entire material world functions. The material world functions in such a way that it gives us an impression that we are the controller. There is nobody beyond us. Which is why Brahmaji, when as part of the the 9th chapter, 2nd canto of the Bhagavatam, there is this Chatusloki Bhagavatam. Chatusloki means there are 4 important verses where the Supreme Lord teaches Lord Brahma, gives instructions to Lord Brahma about his supremacy. Now there, Brahmaji will recognize the greatness of the personality of God. So very similar to the verse that we are seeing today. Go back to that verse. This is Srimad Bhagavatam 2:9-30. So here Brahma is talking to the Lord. He's saying, "Oh my Lord, the unborn, you have shaken hands with me just as a friend does with a friend. I shall be engaged in the creation of different types of living entities, and I shall be occupied in your service. I shall have no perturbation, but I shall pray that all this may not give rise to pride, as if I were his." You see, the Lord is praying to Brahmaji is praying to the Lord that I should not become proud of my position. It is very easy to become proud of your position. In fact, that's why even Lord Brahma is not in the position of being liberated. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, right? Brahma bhuvana loka punaravartina mama petadu konteya punarjanmana. Starting from the position of Lord Brahma down to the lowest creature in this material world, everyone is subject to this process of repeated birth. So which means Brahma also becomes proud of his position. And whenever he becomes proud of his position, it is difficult for him to see the reality. That's why even Lord Brahma has to go through this process of repeated birth. If Brahma can purify himself, understand the personality of Godhead, go back to the spiritual world, that's also possible. But because Brahma also feels that he is the controller, he is in that position where he has to undergo this process. That's why the devotees of the Lord are saved from this if they take shelter of the sadhu and the shastra. Sadhus and the shastras will give them the strength to come out of this bondage of Maya. Otherwise, coming out of this bondage of Maya is extreme. In fact, there's another interesting pastime in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I think a lot of you know this pastime of how a devotee is able to not get illusioned by Maya. And this is regard to pastime of Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur was a great devotee. It was called Namacharya by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called Haridas Thakur Namacharya because he used to chant 3 lakh names of the Lord every day. The nānṛtaṁ, the rahasya of the nama, was something that Haridas Thakur was able to completely appreciate. Just like Swarup Damodar Goswami was an expert in Madhurya Rasa. Ramananda Rai knew Rasa Tattva. Similarly, Haridas Thakur was Namacharya. So Mahaprabhu, in his team of disciples and associates, he had experts in each of these different fields. So this Haridas Thakur, there was this person by name Ramachandra Khan. This comes in the Antilila, where this Ramachandra Khan is trying to somehow put Haridas Thakur into this. So Haridas Thakur always used to chant Krishna's names. And so much so that in that village, he became very famous. Everybody knew about Haridas Thakur. And so this Ramachandra Khan was envious of Haridas Thakur. Very envious. He felt that, this Haridas Thakur is getting so much popularity. And he being the main person in that village, this Ramachandra Khan, he somehow wanted to belittle Haridas Thakur. He didn't want Haridas Thakur to get so much fame. So what he did was, he sent a prostitute to somehow attract the attention of Haridas Thakur, so that if somebody in the village can find both of them together, then Haridas Thakur's name and fame will get diminished. So this was the intent of Ramachandra. So Ramachandra Khan I'll not go too much into the details of that pastime, but I just want to drive home the point how Maya Devi herself will surrender onto a devotee. So this prostitute will go and wait for Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur will say, I have to finish my rounds. In fact, in that month, he would have made a vow that he wants to chant 10 million names of the Lord. So he will tell her, wait outside. And he'll tell her, I'll accept you. I'll give you what you want, but you need to wait outside till I complete my rounds. So she'll sit outside besides the tulsi plant and she'll wait for Haridas Thakur. The whole night. The next day morning, she'll find that Haridas Thakur would still completed his round. So she'll go back. Ramachandra Khan. So Ramachandra Khan will, she prostrate will tell Ramachandra Khan, I'll try again tomorrow. So she'll come back again. This time also Haridas Thakur will say, I'm not completed my rounds. So same thing will happen for 2 days. But in this process, what will happen? This prostitute, by hearing the names of Krishna, she herself will start chanting and she'll become a devotee of the Lord. And she'll surrender onto Haridas Thakur. And Haridas Thakur will ask her to give away all the wealth that she has accumulated. Haridas Thakur will tell the prostitute, go and distribute all the wealth that you accumulated and come here and simply chant. So in this way, the prostitute will actually become a devotee of the Lord by the mercy of Haridas. Haridas Thakur will have a similar instinct that will happen where he will be chanting the holy names of the Lord in a cave, sitting in a cave, he will be chanting Krishna names. This time again, Maya Devi personally will come to test Haridas, to try and see if Haridas Thakur's meditation can be disturbed. Haridas Thakur will not feel any difficulty in converting this Maya Devi also to the devotee. So in fact, it's explained Antya-lila. Yeah. So this is the statement that incarnation of Maya Devi, she'll say, Tabe nari kahe tandre kari namaskar, ami Maya karite ailana parikshatama. After offering obeisances to Haridas Thakur, the woman said, I am the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I came here to test you. Further on, she'll say, I have previously captivated the mind of even Brahma, not to speak of others. Your mind alone I have paid to attract. So, in the purport, Prabhupada explains, beginning from Lord Brahma down to this insignificant ant, everyone without exception is attracted by the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of God. So, the illusory energy of the Lord is not so easy to overcome. The verdict of the Shastras is that a pure Vaishnava or a devotee, or the Lord never thinks of enjoying this meditation. That's why a pure Vaishnava, devotee of the Lord, is able to come out of this situation, because he is taken shelter of the Supreme Personality. So even Brahma, in fact, Brahma was attracted to his own daughter called bhoḥ. Explained the third canto of the Bhagavatam. Brahma was even attracted to his own daughter called bhoḥ. So this illusory energy of the Lord is very, very difficult to overcome. But for a devotee, she goes on to further say, see, my dear sir, you are the foremost devotee. Simply seeing you and hearing you chant the holy name of Krishna has purified my consciousness. Now, I want to chant the holy name of the Lord. Please be kind to me by instructing me about the ecstasy of chanting the Hare Krishna. See, Maha Bhagavata tumi tomara darshan, tomare Krishna nama kirtan shravan. So, Maya Devi personally is becoming the illusory potency of the Lord, is actually becoming a disciple of the devotee. You see how powerful the devotee is. How powerful. That's why defeating Maya or defeating the illusory potency of the Lord, defeating the concept that I am the controller is not possible by our own intellectual abilities. Even if we know the Shastras, sometimes people say, right, you know what, as I become old, I become 50 years old, 60 years old, I think I'll take up devotional activity then. But now I'm comfortable where I am. It is not that this devotional activity will just get manifest because you want to take interest. Just because you decide that from today, I will chant 16 rounds, with the intent of becoming a devotee. That by itself will not help us get out of the clutches of Maya. What is important is the association of devotees. The coming in contact with sadhu and shastra, like what we read in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instructions to Sanatana Goswami. Similarly, accepting a spiritual master. These are the things which will help us recognize Krishna as the personality of God. And if in that mood we chant, we glorify, we practice our regulative principles, chant 16 rounds, all of that, then this Krishna prema will get manifest. That's why in the 9 processes of devotional service, Atha Shraddha Sadhu Sangha, then comes Bhajana Kriya and then prayer. So Sadhu Sangha is a very, very important aspect. For anybody who wants to come out of this illusion of thinking himself as a controller, this particular aspect. So this Mayadevi here further explains, there is now a flood of the eternal nectar of love of Godhead due to the incarnation of Lord Chaitanya. All living entities are floating in that flood. The entire world is now. Actually, it is only by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, from whom we understood this very merciful incarnation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, that is actually giving us even the slightest chance of realizing and recognizing a supreme truth beyond us. Otherwise, we wouldn't have come to this platform. That's why Krishna Goswami, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, says, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Daya Karo Vichar, Vichar Karile Pave Chamatkar. If one even thinks, vichar means just thinking, if one even thinks of the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then immediately, Chamatkar, all auspicious. See, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so merciful that Kaviraj Goswami is saying that one, even if he thinks about the mercy, oh, how merciful is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then that by itself can manifest all auspicious. That's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's incarnation in this age of Kali is the most wonderful thing that has happened. The entire world is now thankful to him. Because without his mercy, the secret of Krishna Prema wouldn't have gotten. And without the mercy of Prabhupada, he wouldn't have known who is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is a very big secret. Mahaprabhu is actually distributing this free. And he's distributing this to whom? Patita Pavan, to the most fallen person. So if we are the most fallen souls, we actually have our claim first. Whoever is most fallen, they have their claim first. The Mahaprabhu is Patita Pavan, most fallen can get liberated. And how he liberates them? By preaching this holy name of Krishna, by chanting the Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. By chanting the holy names of the Lord, one can free himself from all material contamination. Krishna mantra hoite have samsara mochana. Krishna nama hoite have Krishna recha. Chanting Krishna's names, one can actually come out of this bondage of existence. That is possible. So powerful. That's why Mahaprabhu is preaching that one simply chant. In fact, this chanting itself, right, many times It is said, Chaitanya Charitamrita, that Kalikale Nama Rupe Krishna, that this Krishna's incarnation in this age of Kali is actually the Nama Prabhu. The Nama Prabhu, the holy name of the Lord, is actually incarnated in this world. But just like how Krishna, then he appeared in this world, or how Lord Ramachandra appeared, right? When they appeared in this planet, not all of them recognized them as the Supreme Personality of God. Everybody who saw Krishna or everybody who saw Lord Ramachandra, they could not make out that here he is the Supreme Lord. Only those who were fortunate, those who understood the signs, would actually identify. Similarly, even in this age of Kali, Krishna has appeared as Nama Prabhu. He has appeared as the holy name, as the incarnation of the holy. But not everybody can identify that holy name to be equal to Krishna. Once we identify the holy name to be equal to Krishna, then we know that Krishna's manifestation in this planet, we are directly associating with that. How nice or how wonderful would we feel had we been in Dwapar Yuga, and if Krishna had been the best of us. This is what we all want to experience. Many times we say, right? We would say how nice it would have been if we had been in the time when Srila Prabhupada was physically present. Or when we also say how nice it would have been had we been physically present when Krishna was on this planet, or when Lord Ramachandra was on this planet. What we should realize is even now, Krishna is in this planet in the form of the holy name. But because we cannot recognize it, we are not able to fill our hearts with love of God. So it is not that just by the Lord being present, everything will get manifested. No. Even if the Lord is personally present on this planet, we need to understand His presence with the help of Sadhu Shastra. Only then can we experience His presence. So it is a very great fortune that while we are living on this planet, this holy name is incarnated. And this holy name is not different from Krishna. Actually, whenever we chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, we should chant with the feeling that we are actually associating with the Lord. If we chant in that mood, oh, this chanting is so blissful. Chanting is so blissful because you are thinking, you are understanding that this holy name is not different from Krishna. Just like how much wonderful would you feel if Krishna is, you are the same Dwarka or the same Vrindavana as Krishna is there. You are seeing him every day. How nice or how wonderful. The same pleasure we can experience when we associate with the holy name. That's why this holy name is very, very powerful. Holy name is very, very powerful. And if we can connect to this holy name, so whenever we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, one of the things that we have to remember, it is difficult obviously to control the mind, but to the extent possible, if we can give attention to every word of the holy name, we can associate with it. That's why Srila Prabhupada says, simply chant Krishna's names. The process is very simple, right? Prabhupada says the process is very simple. All that you have to do is, you have to just chant, and the same chant you have to do. The same chant you have to do. Concurrently, if you just chant and hear, when we say Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. If you concurrently chant and hear, we can get connected to the holy name. And when we get connected to the holy name, that's when we can start feeling the presence of, obviously this takes time, takes practice, we're all learning. But the point that we wanted to make here is that Krishna is actually appeared in this form. Prabhupada says the process is, he uses these exact words. The process is that you simply chant Hare Krishna and exactly the same sound you hear. This is what Prabhupada says. The process is that you chant Hare Krishna and exactly the same sound you hear. Prabhupada then says, you continue doing this, then everything will go. So, in our current situation, in this age of Kali, that we are all flooded with so many thoughts. While I'm speaking so many different things, my heart is also contaminated with everything. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsara, everything is there. But there's only one hope for us. The only hope is somehow we should keep ourselves connected to the Holy. That's the only hope. If somehow or other we can continue chanting this Hare Krishna mantra, that's why Prabhupada says the 16 rounds of chanting, we should do it without fail. That will help us from not falling down into this well of illusion. So this illusion, the subject of illusion that we have talked about today, or the subject of recognizing the supreme truth beyond illusion, that becomes possible in our current circumstances if we continue associating with the holy name. The more we get attached to Krishna Nam, the more it becomes easier for us to not get illusion. At least we will know that Krishna, there is a controller. To this extent, that extent, we can preserve ourselves if we continue chanting Krishna. That's why this chanting, we should not leave it at any cost. Any cost. Anything, irrespective of, even if in a particular day we are not able to finish, somehow the next day we have to ensure that we finish those 16 days. If that will ensure that we don't fall down. The Prabhupada very particularly says this: we chant Krishna's name, chant the prescribed rounds. At least that will prevent you from falling down. And the best way to chant is to chant and hear the same sound that you chant. And the impression that we should have in our mind is that, oh, the Lord has actually incarnated in this form. Just like we see the deity form of the Lord, right? When we see the deity form of the Lord, which is the Archa Vigraha, that's also an incarnation of the Lord. So when we see the deity form of the Lord, how do we get inspired by the deity? When we see the deity with attention, when we see the deity with, we see the deity's eyes, we see the deity's beautiful nose, lips, all of this when we see with attention, then we get captivated by the beauty of the deity. Right? And then we feel bliss in the heart. Similarly, when we connect to the holy name, when we appreciate the features of the holy name, that's when we will actually feel bliss in the heart. That's why chanting with attention is very important. It is difficult, but it is possible if we can constantly keep pushing ourselves to practice. All that we have to do is have this background frame that, this personality of Godhead is manifested in this holy name. And with every name that we chant, like what Prabhupada says, you chant in exactly the same sound you do. If we follow this principle, then we can feel bliss when we chant. So every day when we chant, we have to see if we're able to give attention, then we will feel the presence of the Lord. And we will be able to recognize the supreme truth beyond the illusion, at least to the extent that it will make us feel connected to God. Actually, this chanting is a connection, helps us connect. So this process is something that we should keep doing. Of course, we all have our share of anarthas which we have to somehow burn, but by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy, by His divine grace, His Prabhupada's mercy, all of this has become manifest. And as Prabhupada explains in this purport, very beautiful purport towards the end, what is, which is an incarnation of God, which is not an incarnation of God, we can only understand by authority. Just like now we spoke that the holy name is an incarnation of the Lord. How do we know that? We know that from the Shastras. Shastras say that Krishna has come in the form of the holy name. That's why we accept the holy name, same as that of the Lord. Similarly, Lord Krishna or Lord Ramachandra, when they appeared in this world, in the first canto, third chapter, all of these incarnations of the Lord have been explained. So, through the Puranas, we accept a personality as a supreme personality. Prabhupada very beautifully explains why, though Maharaj Yudhishthir or some of the other great kings, even Ambarish Maharaj, they were all great devotees of the Lord, but they were not recognized as Supreme Personality of God because they were not named as such by Shastras. Some of the symptoms that a personality of God exhibits, like for example, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, there were more than 32 symptoms that was present in his body to confirm that he was the Supreme Personality. So, when the Shastras indicate somebody to be the Supreme Lord, he accepts that person. And that way, be free from all illusion. So, this is what we want to discuss today. Happy to take any questions that any of you may have. I hope the subject matter is clear.
The questions are in the chat, Prabhu.
Okay. Prabhu, is there... Okay. There's some kind of a wind sound. Sorry, I didn't see that. Okay. Prabhu, you still find that wind sound or?
There is some sound apart from your voice also. Yes, Prabhu.
Oh, is it?
I don't know. But
Echoing.
it's echoing or some kind of hissing sound.
Oh, is it? Okay, I'll have to then check mine.
But we can hear Prabhu. It's fine, Prabhu.
Okay. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, does Maya act with the devotees the same way as she acts with non-devotees because the devotees want to get out of this material world while the non-devotees want to stay? That's a nice question. So the Maya actually manifests itself as in two forms. One is called Mahamaya and the other is called Yogamaya. So for the devotees who have taken shelter of the Lord, the Yogamaya potency was, like for example, if you see Yashoda Maya or Nanda Maharaj, right? So they were also illusioned by the potency of Krishna to act as parents of Krishna. Right? Mother Yashoda, every time a demon was killed by Krishna, she would faint because of her intense parental love. Krishna, she would faint. But this illusory potency, where the Lord did not reveal himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is part of the Yogamaya potency of the Lord. This is different from Mahamaya. Mahamaya is where we are all captivated by the illusion of the Lord. We're captivated to think that we are the controller. Right? So that's what acts to the non-devotees. So people who are not devotees, they get captivated by Mahamaya. Mahamaya puts you in an illusion, making you think that you are the controller and makes you forget the Lord. Whereas Yogamaya actually facilitates your relationship. So if you want to be in the bhava, vatsalya bhava, or madhurya bhava, or any of these different things, the Yogamaya facilitates. So that's the potency of Yogamaya. Prem Chaitanya Prabhu has quoted actually a couple of verses in the Bhagavatam 10.125 and 10.169 purport. Maybe you can read those purports to get more clarity on how Yogamaya and Mahamaya acts. Those aspects are clarified there. But this is how Yogamaya is different from Mahamaya. I hope that answers the question.
Prabhuji, but Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, but many times devotee they get attracted to many material things now. So it is Mahamaya definitely.
Yeah, correct. So by devotee here we mean a pure devotee. Of course, when we are in the stage of trying to become devotees, the influence of Mahamaya will also be there. So pure devotees who kind of reach the stage of love of Godhead, for them Mahamaya doesn't act, the Yogamaya acts. But your question, yes, for devotees who we are trying to become pure devotees, or we are progressing in the path of devotion, Mahamaya also tests us because she wants us to see if we are actually serious. Like even for Haridas Thakur, right? Haridas Thakur, it was Mahamaya who was trying to attract the attention of Haridas. Even for a great devotee like Haridas Thakur, Mahamaya was trying to attract him. But because he was a devotee, he was able to control his urges and he was able to go beyond. So the material world is ruled by Durga Devi or Maya Devi, and her job is to keep us in this material world. She wants to somehow see how she can keep us in this material world because that is a duty that has been assigned to you. Just like if you're in a prison house, right, and you're trying to escape from that prison house, the jailer in that prison house will try to take all steps necessary to keep you in that prison house. He will not allow you to escape from the prison house. But of course, if you conduct yourself well, if you do all your duties assigned properly, then the administration is in charge of all of these different prisoners will by themselves release you. They'll ask you to go out. Say, okay, you've done a good job, you can go out. So similarly, we are in this prison house of this material world, and for us to come out of this prison house, you have to act as keep acting under the instructions of Sadhu Shastra Guru. And if we do this duty properly, then we can come out of this illusory minds. Did that answer your question, or do you had any further clarifications?
Prabhuji, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Is there anything else? Yeah. Prabhu, is there anywhere in CC where we can find the Hare Krishna Mantra, a specific so-called Guru in Tamil Nadu uses the name of Lord Chaitanya, but he uses in the Hare Rama order, but not the Hare Krishna? Yeah, I think the closest in the Adi Leela there is a mention, but then it talks about Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Eva Kevalam, Kalonashteva. It is the Kali Santarana Upanishad which specifically talks about the Hare Krishna Mahamantra word, the way it is spelled out. So this debate is always there, whether the Hare Rama should come first or the Hare Krishna should come first. Actually, in the Kali Santarana Upanishad is very clearly stated it to be Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. That is how it is stated in the Kali Santarana Upanishad. Now, Prabhupada gives a very good explanation on this. Prabhupada says that even if you chant Hare Rama first, right, if you keep chanting it continuously, the Rama will come. Whether the Rama comes first or the Krishna comes first, you lose track of. Just like when Valmiki, right, he said he wanted to learn chanting, he said Mara 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 Mara. So that Mara Mara Maram became Rama. Right. Similarly, even if you chant Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, you keep doing it this way, at some stage you will forget whether Krishna is coming first or Rama is coming first. This is what Prabhupada explained. Of course, Prabhupada's intent was not to change the order, but we understand from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's disciples, all from his associates, that the way this was chanted was with Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. That is the order in which it was chanted. Is
Prabhu, is that Hare Krishna, Prabhu, is that any references from any? But mostly in Bhakti Vinod Thakura's bhajan.
Yeah, so you can find in the disciples of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or in the literatures of the Goswamis, you can find evidence. But in the Chaitanya Charitramrit, to the extent that I know, I've not seen a verse which specifically spells out this. It only says Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama. That's the closest that it gets to. There is this quote from Brahmanadya Purana, but But otherwise, I don't think the Hare Krishna mantra. But I think there is a. Let me just see the Adi Leela. Maybe the same verse in the Kali Santarana Upanishad is it quoted? See that. Give me a second. Ask this question. When the debate with Prakashananda Saraswati happens, that's when the Lord talks about this. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, see. So Mahaprabhu is talking about his debate with Prakashananda Saraswati. Yeah, so here is where he will start talking about the Mahamantra, the defense of the Mahamantra. It's in 783 Adi Leela. Yeah. Try and see if I can pull out there a particular verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Maybe it again will have reference from some other Shastra, not be directly in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. But in this conversation between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Prakashananda Saraswati is where some of these glories of the holy name, particularly the intensity of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is mentioned. Try and see if I can pull it out for you, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu, that will be very nice, Prabhu, because we all know, especially in Tamil Nadu, he's using the name of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but he's concocting his own things, and even influencing many ISKCON devotees, the Hare Krishna devotees.
To the extent it is there, we'll see.
Prabhuji, in Adi Leela 3.40, it is there, Hare Krishna Mahamantra from Kali Santarana Upanishad.
348.
340.
340. 340.
Purport.
Purport it is there. I think he's asking if there is something in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in the text itself. Purport it is there. Kali Santarana Upanishad, many places it is quoted. Specifically the text he's asking, but usually we use this quote from the Kali Santarana Upanishad to support our understanding. Of course, the Goswamis and all of the disciples of Mahaprabhu have passed on this literature down the lineage. They've also recommended it this name, which is why we're following it. So, all the questions, I think we can conclude. Thank you so much to all of you for your time. How to understand that Maya is taking over us? Very simple. Prabhupada explains this. If you're not thinking about Krishna, you're thinking about Maya. Krishna Surya Saman Maya Andhakar. Jaha Krishna Vaha Nahi Maya Andhakar. So, if you're thinking of Krishna, that means you're not thinking about Maya. If Krishna is forgotten, then there is Maya. That's all. That's the simplest way you can understand that you're taken over. So, which is why we discuss this aspect of Bahirmukh and Krishna Mukh, right? When we talk about this particular aspect in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, Bahirmukh means you're turning your face away from Krishna. And Krishna Mukh means you're turning your face away from Krishna. So, if you're not turning your face in favor of Krishna, if you're not seeing Krishna, then there are only two possibilities. Either there can be sunshine, or if sunshine is not there, there can be darkness. Right? So if sunshine is not there, there will be darkness. Similarly, when Krishna is not there, there is no. Hare Krishna, can you explain why Chaitanya Krishna took incarnation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Okay, so this is very beautifully explained in the Adi Leela. What I do, Prabhu, is I'll probably, so in the Adi Leela, it is explained the external reasons and internal reasons for Mahaprabhu's appearance. Very briefly, the external reason why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took his appearance was to preach this holy name of Krishna to this entire universe. To give Krishna prema is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in this world. It is a Yuga Dharma. Hare Krishna Mahamantra is Yuga Dharma, which is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared to preach the Yuga Dharma to this world and to give the Vraja Prema, which was something that Krishna experienced during his pastimes in Vrindavana. He wanted to give this to the world, which is why he appeared. That's the external reason. The internal reason for his appearance was because he wanted to experience Radha Bhav. He wanted to experience the devotion that Radharani had for him. So, Radharani was so much devoted to Krishna. There's no greater devotee than Radharani. But to understand Radharani's love for Krishna, Krishna had to accept the mood of Radharani. That's why it's called Gauranga. Gauranga means Antar Krishna Bahir Gauranga. So internally, though he appeared as Krishna, he accepted the golden form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The golden complexion of Radharani. Sorry, the golden complexion of Radharani. So, though he was Krishna, he accepted the golden complexion of Radharani, the mood of Radharani. Radha Bhava Dudi Suvalitam Krishna Naumi Swarupa. So, with that mood of Radharani, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. The reason he appeared was he wanted to understand Radharani's love, how much he loves her. That's why when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to dance before Jagannath, he used to faint because he used to approach Jagannath in the mood of Radharani. So that was the internal reason for his appearance. So these are the two aspects. There is an external reason, an internal reason for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance. The external reason was to give the holy name to this world, to give Krishna Prema to this world, and the internal reason was for him to experience supreme love that Radha had. Okay, that answers your question. Thank you. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I think there's one more
Jai.
question. I'll probably take it offline. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the association, Prabhu. Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Hare
Jai
Krishna.
Shri Prabhupada.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much, Prabhu.
Thank you so
Hare
much,
Krishna.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.